Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a video. We're going to be doing the throwback review of the Honshu Tactical Wakizashi. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have a love-hate relationship with the Honshu brand. Alright, that being, and I'm not the only one. Anyone who orders a honshu knows that they are notorious for being very thick, very blunt blades that require a good amount of grinding to make more lively in the hand. But we will be going over this sword and some of the things that have changed, some of the things that have broken, and some of the things that I've needed to repair. We will start with the pommel, which for anyone that wants to buy a Honshu product, I feel is the most important thing to go over. And that is that this pommel is basically secured with a rat tail screw. It has been screwed on in some fashion where it was impossible to remove. So I assume that this was drilled and tapped and then threaded onto the tang, and then the scales, because there's a seam on this grip, the scales were then put on and then screwed into place, and then it was shipped off. So, you're probably wondering, Outlaw, if the pommel looks completely fine, why are you saying that it broke? Well, that's because, as we can see, that's JB Weld epoxy that I filled in the crevice with and then reattached the pommel to the sword. So the pommel is now even more strongly attached than it was before. That ain't going anywhere unless I bash it with a hammer, which I don't intend to. Now, the pommel itself, there's no real hot spots, there's no real sharp edges. The edges are rather sharp in terms of how they terminate, but they're not sharp in a way that will cut into your hand unless you really grip it or you have something that goes and causes your hand to torque violently over the pommel. I will say that these corners right here, they are the sharpest part of the pommel, but your hand barely comes into contact with them, so especially if you completely choke down on the pommel, it's in a position, at least with my hands, that I don't feel it. Or at least it's very minor. Now, moving up onto the grip. The grip, when I first got this, I thought was very aggressive. It was very rough feeling in my hand. And yes, while I have gotten used to it, I will say that this is still rather aggressive. This diamond patterning, along with these little scoops, and this section right here with all these little divots cut out of it. Once you get accustomed to how the grip feels, it's not that bad and you barely feel it anymore. But it is worth mentioning that it is still there. And I feel like it was more me using this sword and kind of wearing the rubber down over time. Originally I had a layer of black electrical tape over the top of this because I couldn't stand how rough it was swinging it. But I've since taken that off and have reaccustomed myself to the grip. Now moving up to the guard, or the Suba area. All it really has going for it is this little raindrop, teardrop. I struggle to call it a Suba, and it's not really a cross guard. So this weirdly shaped teardrop guard. Now, as we can see, it does actually have some dimension. It slants up, and it's beveled in a way that adds an artistic flair to it. But at the same time, I agree with Gargoyle. He recently made a video comparing this to a more traditional blade. I know that this is a ninjato. I know it's not traditional. It's the only katana-like object I have out here at the moment that I don't have to dig out of something. But for what it is, it does serve the purpose of keeping your hand from sliding up the blade. Yes, it wouldn't really work too well if you were using this sword in a fight, but let's be honest, if you were in a room full of swords and this was one of the options you would pick for a fight, I really can only see one type of person grabbing this instantaneously and like, yeah, this is the perfect, like, ultimate tactical weapon that will give me every advantage. And that would be the keyboard munching, that would be the Cheeto munching keyboard warrior mall ninjas that think tactical equals power, bruh. You can see my the condescension in my voice. But in any case, it does the purpose of what a handguard should do. One of the two main purposes. Keeps your hand from sliding up the blade, and it could defend your sword from an errant strike, but the possibility is extremely low. So I'm not going to criticize the guard for that. It also completes the kind of asymmetrical aesthetic of the grip that they were going for, this kind of asymmetrical tactical design. And really it's not even tactical, because if this was a actual tactical design, it would have a more military combat knife style of hilt versus this. This is more like tactical. Moving down to the ricasso area. I actually do like that they went with a ricasso and not some kind of habaki, because actually having a ricasso here makes the blade stronger, because the ricasso is of the same thickness as the spine. It basically bolsters the area right by the guard and right at the weakest point of the sword, which is where the guard and the grip and the guard with the blade, the guard, and the grip all meet together. Next, we're not going to get to the blade for a moment. I'm going to get to the scabbard. The scabbard is a simple wooden scabbard with a, I want to say plastic coating, but also could be matte paint. It's relatively chip resistant. You can see there's some chips and shit in here. The Koigata actually got broken off when me and Outlaw Spartan were doing some stupid shit. Like, we were doing the whole, like, partially unsheathing and then, like, throwing the scabbard away, like, hwah! Kind of otaku anime shit that otaku anime lovers like us do. Now, and yes, I know I shouldn't have just that, but at the same time, my sword. That's all I'm going to say. There's no particular shaping to the saya. It's your standard octagonal tube that, honestly, I don't really mind. I'm not really a big supporter of sayas that taper. I find them far too fragile and thin. To me, a saya should be as much able to be a weapon as the actual weapon that it holds. It also has this reinforcement piece that I believe is just wood or plastic that goes over the koiguchi. As we can see, onto the koiguchi actually, this is an interesting thing. So the piece itself has the classic katana what the fuck? The classic, almost diamond-like cutout of the katanas, classic koiguchi, like so. But here's a difference. As we can see, the actual slot of the blade is rectangular. The slot that the blade rests in. Whereas this one holds that this triangular shape all the way down. The reason being is that since this does not have a habaki, it does not require that kind of shaping. Which means that you can actually get a fit of equivalent tightness without as much carving needing to be done, or intricate carving. You basically just have to carve out the channel and sand to shape. Now, overall, the saya has served its purpose very well, which is to house the blade. And honestly, I actually like the saya more without the koiguchi. Not the koiguchi, the koigata. And I'm going to sand that off and then cover it with black Sharpie because, to me, the koigata actually ruins the aesthetic of what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be a modern katana that doesn't really completely atone to the traditional shapes. And so having a more traditional fitted saya kind of throws off the whole, like, potential sci-fi aspect. Now, if this had some sort of, like, ring system on here that you could strap it to your back, I'd find that actually more appealing than a koigata where you would have it on your belt. To me, I feel like a sword like this would be more better suited in a back setup, simply for the aesthetics. And if I hold the scabbard, you can draw a sword like this on the back. Very important. Now, I'm sure some of you have heard the rattle. And while it does rattle and shake around, that's not necessarily a detriment, since a lot of swords over the course of the use, their parts begin to rattle. Now, I will say traditionally you could just add another seppa or a liner or some kind of spacer to a traditional katana and eliminate the rattle. But in this instance, because of the fact that I have no idea how to take this grip off, I haven't even tried, honestly, there's no real way for me to fix that aside from pumping epoxy down into the crevice of the fuller. Speaking of which, it's time to get to the blade, since I'm trying to make this not a 40-minute video. The blade is nothing really special to write home about. The fullers terminate, honestly, pretty damn evenly. As I said before, it's an extremely thick blade with no kind of distal taper at all. And the fullers appear to run all the way down past the suba, as it was, for lack of a better term. But there is one very interesting aspect of this. And that is that with a little bit of work, this sword can actually be turned into a blade that has a semi-decent edge. Now, I know what you're going to say, that's not outlaw level sharpness. Well, I got it to an edge that I was happy with. As I said before, this is 5160 spring steel. And it will require you to do somewhat a decent amount of grinding. So I can't really recommend this for anybody who wants to take a sword out of the box and immediately start cutting things. This needs some prep work. Batman sword, always needs prep time. But overall, it's not a bad sword. And now I'm going to say what I would recommend this sword for, which I am either in the process of uploading or it's already uploaded a video of what niche I think this sword best suits. And this sword to me best suits the niche of a camping blade. A camping blade or a scab would say with his truck knives, you know, knives that you would put in the back of your truck to clear brush or something from the roadside that you're not particularly worried about screwing up, truck sword. This I would feel would be a good blade for camping, clearing brush, chopping down saplings, processing firewood to a certain degree, and even warding off small to mid wild animals. Now, in the video I was talking about the niche for this blade, I mentioned fighting a coyote. Like if a coyote attacked you, let's say you're in a camping area where guns are not allowed, a coyote attacks you. And there are plenty of stories of people killing coyotes by beating them with large branches they find on the ground. This will do more damage than any large branch, simply because it's lighter, true, but it's made of steel, it hits harder than wood, it doesn't have as much natural spring as wood, and lastly, you're hitting it with an edge. Alright? That already concentrates the force much greater than if you were to just simply hit the bloody thing with a blunt stick. Or if the coyote jumps at you, you can just hold it out in front of you and let the coyote pierce itself on the tip. But overall, honestly, who would I recommend this sword for? Honestly, I recommend it for anyone who's looking for a decent camping blade that knows how to sharpen a blade, is willing to take the time to do the work to put a decent edge on this. And if you're also looking for a blade that is bigger than a knife, but not so much the same size as a sword, I feel that this would be the perfect kind of middle ground for being able to get through a decent amount of different types of saplings, brush, and everything like that, and also be a good like truck blade. Let's say you're driving down the road and a tree fell over, like a 6-inch tree fell over. Oh, you've no axe, you've no chainsaw, but you have your trusty truck sword or truck knife. Stupid spider. Truck sword. Just chop, 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 chop. And generally speaking, a blade like this actually has more control. True, an axe will hit harder and generally chop through most trees faster, but it's easier to actually control a sword swing than it is with an axe, because with a sword swing you can go like bat, bat. Like bat and then bat, or bat, bat. You can generally switch direction on a dime. But that's basically what I would recommend this sword for. Anyone who's looking for pretty much a utilitarian tool. Now, the retail of this sword at the time I bought it was $109. I don't know how much higher or lower it has gone, but I bought this from TrueSwords.com. You can also find it on Cult of Athena. And yes, honestly, I need to actually do some videos with the Shinwa. But that's a thing for another video. So, until next time, I know we'll band of outlaws, outlaw samurai tells all y'all be crazy rednecks. Be safe and use your weapons. I'm Al. Peace. Hope you enjoy. First throwback review that isn't 30 minutes plus.